At that time, I was 8.5 to 9 months pregnant. My baby was to be delivered in 2 weeks. Pigs kept on shooting. So he kept on hollering out. Finally, they stopped. They pushed me and the other brother by the kitchen door and told us to face the wall. Heard the pig say, "He's barely alive, he'll barely make it." I assumed they were talking about Chairman Fred. So then they started shooting the pigs. They started shooting again. I heard the sister scream. They stopped shooting. Pig said, "He's good and dead now."
Over the summer of 2020, when my job had shut down because of COVID, I had a lot of free time on my hands, and I spent a lot of it learning about the Black Panther Party. Their timeline as an organization, and eventual downfall from the root rot caused by the FBI's counterintelligence program, or COINTELPRO, fascinated me. The story of the Panthers reminded me of the beginnings of movements that played out in the global south around the same time. The Cuban Revolution, the Algerian Revolution, etc. The fact that an organized, revolutionary current was once growing within the cracks of the imperial core inspired me, and it was no secret why I'd never heard about it. When I found out there was a movie coming out about a history that's so glossed over or whitewashed, I tried not to get too excited, but I was really cautiously pumped to see it. After watching Judas and the Black Messiah, I can say that I was impressed by the quality of it critically as a film, as well as its pretty faithful depiction of the events surrounding the Chicago chapter of the Black Panther Party and the conspiracy to murder its chairman, Fred Hampton. What I was really disappointed with, though, was the way it was framed. Like the name implies, Judas and the Black Messiah is a story about Bill O'Neill, the FBI informant tasked with infiltrating the Chicago chapter of the Black Panther Party, and the role he played in the FBI assassination of 21-year-old Chairman Fred Hampton. The decision to frame this story through the perspective of a mole, while not implying any critical narrative flaws, angles it in a direction that encourages the audience to sympathize with some elements of COINTELPRO. It takes this incredibly important and relevant story and makes it into one about petty intrigue, only decorated by a background of real politics. I want to circle back for a second and say that I love this movie. I want to throw Oscars at every single member of the cast, and I think that the movie tackled the story it chose to tell masterfully. A theme that was shown particularly eloquently was that of the contradictions that black proletarian families face. There's a scene near the end where Hampton's partner, a pregnant Deborah Johnson, played by Dominique Fishback, is giving a monologue about how her partner can confidently offer up his body and life in service of the revolution only because he doesn't have another person growing inside of him.
You think you're gonna be a bad mother?
It was a question.
Why you gotta ask yourself that?
I don't know. Maybe the fact that I'm bringing a child into a war zone. These aren't considerations you have to make. You get to go out there and talk about dying a revolutionary death and how your body belonged to the revolution because you don't have another person growing inside your body.
Scenes like that, and one where Hampton visits a murdered comrade's mother, speak to how black proletarian mothers and black proletarian families are robbed of the joys of loving because they have to come to terms with the fact that the people that they love, the people they bring into this world, will one day be crushed by it, and that pain is unimaginably powerful. The film pulls no punches when it comes to the party line. It utilized actual speeches by Fred Hampton, recited beautifully by Daniel Kaluuya, and didn't try to alter the radical revolutionary character of the party to cater to the liberal view of the broader civil rights movement. After introducing Bill O'Neill, the film starts off with a montage of videos of actual party members and sympathizers speaking, including Angela Davis alluding to the party's stance on armed defense, and Bob Lee giving a speech about a non-capitalist state. Even the name of the film alludes to a memo written by J. Edgar Hoover, then director of the FBI, describing the need to prevent the rise of a black messiah among black American revolutionaries and adjacent leftists. The film also manages to cover important parts of Fred Hampton's contributions to the Black Panther Party, notably the Rainbow Coalition, uniting members of drastically different political factions with a shared class interest. We get to see the palpable hesitation and sometimes outrage coming from all sides as Hampton united the party with the Young Lords and the Young Patriots, and the slow, quiet resolution of that struggle culminating in members of all mentioned factions present in support of Hampton after his release from jail. This coalition was arguably the most dangerous aspect of Fred Hampton's influence on the political landscape of the 60s and 70s in the eyes of the FBI.
Black people and white poor people and red poor people and Puerto Rican poor people and Latin American Puerto Rican people of poor people of all descents, they had them caught up in movements based on racism when the Black Panther Party stood up and said that we don't care what anybody says. We don't think you fight fire with fire best, we think you fight fire with water best. We're going to fight racism, not with racism, but we're going to fight with solidarity. We said we're not going to fight capitalism with black capitalism, but we're going to fight it with socialism.
As joining together working class people of all backgrounds against capital and against police terrorism must have been terrifying. While things like this were conservatively sprinkled over top of the film and by no means central themes, I appreciated their inclusion. I can assume that a huge reason why this film does so well when it comes to a faithful and historically accurate sketch of the Black Panther Party and the events of the Chicago chapter is that Fred Hampton's widow and son played important roles as advisors in its production. In an LA Times interview, Aquan Jerry, formerly Deborah Johnson, says that she and her son Fred Hampton Jr. have taken a principled stance toward maintaining the legacy of Fred Hampton Sr. under consensus conditions, but were convinced that the cast and crew would honor the family's advice. But as Hampton Jr. says in the same interview, a revolutionary is never satisfied. Pretty early on in the film, we're introduced to Special Agent Roy Mitchell, the FBI agent responsible for recruiting Bill O'Neill as a mole during COINTELPRO. While FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover is portrayed as thoroughly detestable and openly racist, Special Agent Mitchell, played by Jesse Plemons, is portrayed as soft-spoken, even kind to O'Neill. As we see more of him, we learn that he's sympathetic to the cause of the Black Panther Party and only disagrees with their methods. He says the Panthers and the Klan are one and the same, and that he's all for civil rights, but you can't cheat your way to equality. This is something that, even to the ears of a liberal, sounds absolutely ridiculous. So no doubt the film casts this character in kind, right? You'd think so, but the scene is so sympathetic to Mitchell that it almost primes the audience to buy into the horseshoe theory that he's espousing. Nearly every FBI scene has this strange dynamic between Special Agent Mitchell and his colleagues, where he's depicted as this timid figure committed to a righteous moral compass limited by the inner workings of his organization. This is dangerous because it puts forward a critique that isn't systemic. It treats the state-sanctioned terrorism shown in the film not as inherent to the American capitalist system, but as relating to bad apples in the FBI and police. By trying to redeem Special Agent Mitchell, the film is almost kinder to him than to O'Neill, who's actually being coerced under threat of incarceration by the FBI. Regardless of the explicitly revolutionary content shown in the film from the perspective of the Panthers, the perspective we watch the movie from as the audience dictates the film's message, intentional or not. The inclusion of this entire section of the film, while not taking up as much time as that of the chairman and O'Neill, was completely unnecessary. Beyond adding more petty intrigue, trying to humanize this character felt almost disrespectful to a film tackling the violent deaths of so many Black Panther Party members. That being said, the story of Bill O'Neill and his importance in exploring the decisions many people had to make during COINTELPRO, choosing between their own livelihood and their communities, is absolutely one worth exploring. He's clearly an extremely complicated character in real life, and Lakeith Stanfield does a beautiful job of portraying that in the film. Bill O'Neill teaches us that people's actions are reflections of their economic conditions. O'Neill is caught stealing a car and threatened with years of incarceration if he doesn't comply with Special Agent Mitchell's request. His portrayal in the movie demonstrates the differences and the struggles that members of the lumpen proletariat, the class of people that are forced by their economic conditions to resort to crime to survive, face as compared to political organizers. This is critically important for us to understand, and something that I've never seen covered like this before. Where I take issue is the decision to use O'Neill as the main reference point in the story of Chairman Fred Hampton's murder, a story that so many people are ignorant of and that has never graced Hollywood. Director Shaka King explains this decision by saying that it was a way to contrast ideology in order to highlight Fred Hampton's ideas, allowing him to indict capitalism by showing it without talking about it. But I don't think he was successful in doing this. Capitalism will sell anything back to you if it's profitable, even if it seems revolutionary. This fact affects every piece of media produced under this system, especially media rooted in the struggle for its downfall. In the case of Judas and the Black Messiah, clearly every measure was taken to create a film that's not only respectful of its subject matter, but insightful when it comes to its applications in the world currently. And yet, it still falls prey to the limitations set by the movie industry being one that is driven by profit. I'll leave you with this quote by producer of the film, Charles D. King, that gives me a clue as to a bigger reason the decision to center the film around the perspective of Bill O'Neill was made. I'm going to leave a few links in the description with some resources to use if you want to learn more about the history of the Black Panther Party, including 2 episodes of Revolutionary Left Radio on the Panthers and Fred Hampton, and a documentary called The Black Panthers, Vanguard of the Revolution, which used to be free on YouTube, but now costs a few dollars. It's also on Prime, but I'm sure you can find it somewhere else online. I'll also put in some of the archival footage that I use in the video and the LA Times interview that I cited, but I hope you got something out of this, and thanks for watching.
That you can jail revolutionaries, but you can't jail a revolution. Right. You might run a liberator like Harris Cleave out the country, but you can't run liberation out the country. You might murder a freedom fighter like Bobby Hutton, but you can't murder freedom fighting. And if you do, you come up with answers that don't answer, explanations that don't explain. You come up with conclusions that don't conclude. And you come up with people that you thought should be acting like pigs, that's acting like people and moving on pigs. And that's what we've got to do. So we're going to see about Bobby, regardless of what these people think we should do. Because school is not important and work is not important. Nothing's more important than stopping fascism because fascism will stop us all.